The house is not free of contagious illness. Eleanor Price placed the medical register upon Duke Julian Ravensmere's desk. 27 names filled the pages. Beside each one were dates, temperatures, and symptoms recorded in Eleanor's precise handwriting. Fever, rash, persistent cough, weakness, confusion. Several names were underlined because the patients had worsened during the night. Julian did not open the register. He stood beside the window, watching gardeners arrange white roses along the drive where the Queen's carriage would arrive in 3 days. "A small number of servants are indisposed," he said. "They share sleeping rooms, dining tables, and work areas. They are being kept apart. They have been locked inside the Eastern servants' wing. That is separation. It is not medical quarantine." Julian turned towards her. "What distinction are you attempting to make? A quarantine protects the healthy and treats the sick. Your order merely prevents the sick from being seen." His expression hardened. Outside, workmen raised the royal standard above Ravensmere Hall. Inside the Duke's study, Eleanor opened the register herself. Martha Lane collapsed in the pantry 9 days ago. 3 women from her room became ill within 48 hours. It has now spread through the laundry, kitchens, and carriage staff. How many are dying? That is not the measure of contagion. How many are unable to stand? Eleanor stared at him. Must they begin dying before the truth becomes inconvenient enough to report? Julian's voice cooled. "You are a nurse, Mrs. Price. Do not mistake responsibility for authority over this household. I am responsible for reporting the condition of its patients, and I am responsible for more than 27 patients." He gestured towards the estate beyond the window. "Hundreds of people depend upon this assembly. Musicians, merchants, innkeepers, farmers, and laborers have prepared for months. Cancelling it will destroy wages across the county. Then you should have reported the illness when there was still time to limit the loss." Julian looked again at the royal banner. "The event will proceed." Ravensmere Hall had never looked more magnificent. Its great ballroom had been renovated for the Royal Summer Assembly. Gold leaf covered the ceiling mouldings. Crystal chandeliers had been lowered, cleaned, and rehung. Silk curtains framed the tall windows overlooking the gardens. 300 guests were expected. Ambassadors, ministers, senior officers, members of the court. At the end of the evening, Julian expected to receive confirmation that he would become Lord Chamberlain of the royal household. The appointment would place him in charge of royal ceremonies, major receptions, and the operating standards of every residence used by the crown. Julian believed Ravensmere Hall would prove he deserved it. The serving staff had rehearsed for weeks. Every tray position had been measured. Every movement through the ballroom had been timed. Footmen practiced opening doors in silence. Maids learned the preferences of visiting noblewomen. The kitchens prepared 8 courses, including fish transported in ice and fruit purchased at extraordinary cost. Nothing had been left to chance, except the people expected to perform the work. Julian had once been praised as an unusually considerate master. When he inherited Ravensmere, servants slept in damp basement rooms with little ventilation. Injured workers were dismissed without compensation. Young apprentices worked until exhaustion. Julian changed many of those practices. He built washing rooms, opened a small estate clinic, created pensions for servants who had worked more than 20 years, dismissed a steward known for beatings, reduced the hours of young kitchen workers, paid for medicines during winter outbreaks. These reforms became part of his public identity. He spoke frequently about the duty of powerful households to care for those who sustained them. But Julian's care had always depended upon one assumption. He remained the person entitled to decide what care meant. The servants received treatment because he provided it. They received wages because he approved them. They were permitted to rest when he judged them truly ill. Health was not a right independent of his authority. It was another benefit administered through the Duke. Martha Lane had been the first to fall sick. She was 24 and worked beneath the head cook. For 2 days, she concealed her fever. Her wages supported an elderly mother living in the village. Any servant who abandoned preparations before a royal visit risked dismissal. When Martha complained of dizziness, the head cook told her everyone was tired. She continued peeling vegetables until she collapsed between 2 sacks of flour. Eleanor carried her to the estate clinic. By evening, Martha's skin was burning. 2 days later, the women who shared her sleeping room developed the same fever. Then came 2 laundry workers, a footman, a stable boy, a housemaid assigned to the guest apartments. Within 4 days, Eleanor had recorded 27 cases. She asked Julian to summon the county physician. He refused. A public health report would end the visit before any examination occurred. That may be the proper decision. It may also be unnecessary. Then let an independent doctor determine that. I have a household physician. Dr. Lowe has not examined the eastern wing. He has examined several recovering servants. 3 people, none from the rooms where the illness is spreading. Julian dismissed the objection. He believed Eleanor had become too close to her patients to judge the wider interest calmly. She believed he had become too close to his promotion to judge anything else honestly. Duchess Catherine Ravensmere found the eastern corridor guarded that evening. A folding screen concealed the entrance from anyone using the main servants' staircase. The door had been locked from the outside. A tray containing untouched bowls of cold broth stood on the floor. Catherine turned to the steward holding the key. "Why has this not been collected?" "No one has authorized us to open the door, Your Grace." "Who is tending them?" "Mr. Collins distributes meals." "Mr. Collins is a house steward." "Yes, Your Grace." "He has no medical training." "No." "Where is Mrs. Price?" "Dismissed from the wing." Catherine's expression changed. She ordered the door opened. The steward hesitated. His Grace instructed. "I did not ask who instructed you." Inside, beds had been arranged closely along both walls. Several windows were barely open. Some patients slept. Others watched Catherine with the cautious attention of people unsure whether her arrival would improve anything. Martha Lane tried to sit up. "Please remain still," Catherine said. "Has my mother come?" "She has been waiting at the estate gate. They said visitors were forbidden. For safety, perhaps, but someone should have carried her letters." Martha looked towards an empty table. "I have received none." Catherine found bundles of unopened correspondence in the steward's office that night. Letters from mothers, husbands, sisters, children. All had been held to prevent unnecessary agitation. "You have not created a quarantine," Catherine told Julian. They stood in the ballroom while servants tested the chandeliers above them. "They are separated from the household. They are locked in an overcrowded room without a trained nurse. They receive food and medicine. They receive silence." Julian lowered his voice. "Do not dramatize this. 27 servants are ill. Most will recover. That does not make the declaration true." On the table between them lay the royal health certificate. Every household hosting the Queen was required to confirm that no serious contagious illness was present and that all serving staff had been examined. Eleanor had refused to sign. Julian asked Dr. Henry Lowe, the family physician, to inspect selected servants. Lowe examined 3 people who had nearly recovered and wrote, "No direct evidence of contagious illness was observed in the areas examined." Julian removed the final words. The document sent to the royal household read, "Ravensmere Hall is free of contagious illness." Catherine held both versions. "You changed his statement." "I removed an unnecessary qualification. It was the only honest part. The illness is contained. You have assigned exposed servants to replace those you locked away. They show no symptoms. They slept beside the sick. The ballroom guests will never enter the servants' quarters. Disease does not respect the staircase." Julian's patience broke. "You would cancel a national event because a nurse has frightened you." "No." Catherine placed Eleanor's register beside the certificate. "I would cancel it because your own records prove you lied." The final planning meeting took place the next morning. Representatives from the royal household sat beside caterers, estate managers, and local officials. Julian presented the schedule with practiced calm. Eleanor entered before he finished. She no longer wore the estate nurse's badge. Julian had dismissed her after she refused to withdraw her recommendation. She carried copies of her medical notes. The assembly must be postponed. Julian remained seated. "You are no longer authorized to speak for Ravensmere. I am speaking for 27 patients. You were dismissed for exceeding your office. My office required me to report infectious illness." Julian turned towards the royal representative. "Mrs. Price has allowed professional caution to become hysteria." Eleanor placed the contact chart upon the table. "These 14 servants shared rooms or duties with the sick. They are scheduled to pour wine, prepare royal bedrooms, and handle guests' clothing." The representative reached for the document. Julian covered it with one hand. "This information has not been verified." "Then verify it." "A nurse cannot cancel a royal engagement. Nor can a duke declare a house healthy because the ballroom is clean." Several people looked away. Julian felt every word as a challenge, not merely to his decision, but to his fitness for the office he sought. "Your temperament is unsuitable for work requiring calm judgment." Eleanor held his gaze. Calm judgment is not the same as convenient silence. By noon, she had lost her room at the estate clinic. Her brother's medicine contract was cancelled. The county doctor was denied entry without Julian's invitation. The sick servants' wages were suspended because they were recorded as absent from duty. On the morning of the Royal Assembly, Ravensmere Hall glowed beneath clear summer sunlight. Carriages began arriving before noon. Musicians tuned their instruments. Silver covered the banquet tables. The sick remained behind the locked eastern door. Julian waited upon the front steps, in formal black and gold. Catherine's place beside him was empty. He found her in the eastern corridor with Eleanor and several relatives of the patients. "The royal carriage is approaching," he said. "Then this door must be opened." "Not until it is medically safe." "You refused the physician." "This is not the moment for accusation. You chose the moment when you signed the declaration. You are humiliating the household." Catherine looked at the lock. "No, you hid the household and displayed the ballroom." The Queen's carriage stopped before the main entrance. Julian bowed deeply. Her Majesty looked past him. "Where is the Duchess?" "Attending to a minor domestic concern." Another carriage arrived behind the royal party. Dr. Samuel Harcourt, physician responsible for royal safety, stepped down carrying a medical case. "A concern involving 27 cases of fever?" he asked. The courtyard fell silent. Julian's composure tightened. The reports were exaggerated by a dismissed employee. Eleanor appeared at the top of the servants' stair. "Then allow the physician to count the patients." Dr. Harcourt requested immediate access. Julian described the eastern wing as a controlled quarantine. "Who supervises it?" Harcourt asked. "My steward." "Medical training?" "None." "Who examines the patients each day?" "They are observed." "By whom?" Julian gave no clear answer. The physician reached the eastern door. He examined the lock. "Why can the patients not open this from inside?" "To prevent them entering the household," Eleanor answered. Before he could continue, 3 have recovered sufficiently to walk. They remain confined because returning them to the duty register would expose the false staffing report. Catherine handed Harcourt the wage ledger. Every sick servant had been marked. Absent without service. No wages were due. Dr. Lowe was summoned. He produced the original statement he had signed. Harcourt placed it beside Julian's version. "Who removed the phrase 'in the areas examined'?" Julian stood before the Queen. "Ministers and the household whose safety he was expected to guarantee." The distinction appeared unnecessary. It was the distinction between limited observation and a false declaration. The Queen looked towards Eleanor. "When was His Grace first informed?" 9 days before the certificate was signed." "Did he know you believed the illness contagious?" "Yes." Her Majesty turned to Julian. "Did you know these servants were ill?" "I knew a limited number were indisposed." "Did you sign that the house was free from contagious disease?" Julian could not avoid the answer. "Yes." Dr. Harcourt demanded the key. Julian hesitated. Catherine removed it from the steward's desk and placed it in the physician's hand. The lock turned. The door opened. There were no bodies hidden in darkness. No scene dramatic enough for Julian to call exceptional. There were simply 27 servants lying in close rows, breathing the stale air of a room from which their names, wages, and families had been removed. Martha Lane heard movement in the corridor. Her mother stood beyond the threshold. "Martha?" The young woman tried to rise. Julian raised one hand. "No contact. The risk." "I will determine the precautions," Dr. Harcourt said. He arranged for families to speak from a safe distance and ordered trained medical staff brought inside. The Queen examined the cold food trays and the lock fixed to the outside of the door. Why were they confined this way? To protect the guests. Eleanor opened the replacement duty list. Then why are exposed servants assigned to serve those guests? 14 names appeared beneath duties involving wine, food, bedrooms, and clothing. The supposed quarantine had protected no one. It had merely kept the sick out of sight. The Queen looked at Julian. "A quarantine protects the public." Her eyes moved towards the external lock. This protected the man holding the key. A royal minister closed the document prepared for Julian's appointment. "The nomination for Lord Chamberlain is suspended pending investigation." Julian stepped forward. "Cancelling the assembly will destroy the earnings of suppliers and workers throughout the county." The Queen's expression hardened. "The loss belongs to the man who invited the crown after signing a declaration he knew was false." The assembly was cancelled. The ballroom became a temporary medical ward. Banquet tables were cleared for medicines and case records. Guest rooms were given to physicians and nurses. Healthy servants received full wages and were sent away from the exposed quarters. Julian stood beneath the chandeliers he had polished for the Queen. The perfect room no longer displayed his ability to govern a household. It illuminated the cost of his deception. Behind him, the eastern door remained open, and the 27 people he had reduced to a minor domestic concern were counted, named, and seen again. The royal physicians took control of Ravensmere Hall before sunset. The ballroom remained stripped of flowers and silver. Tables prepared for diplomats now held thermometers, medicine bottles, and patient records. Guest bedrooms became temporary wards for servants who required cleaner air and closer observation. Dr. Harcourt ordered every exposed member of staff examined. The 14 servants assigned to royal duties were removed from the service list immediately. None had yet developed severe symptoms, but all received full wages and separate accommodation. The eastern wing was emptied room by room. Martha Lane was carried into a bright chamber with open windows. Her mother was permitted to speak with her from a safe distance, while a nurse explained each precaution. For the first time since becoming ill, Martha knew what was happening. She knew the physicians had not forgotten her. She knew her wages would be restored. She knew her family had not abandoned her. Julian watched from the corridor. He had supplied food, bedding, and ordinary medicine, yet he had withheld the one thing every patient needed before treatment could become care: the truth. The investigation began while the outbreak was still being contained. Every medical paper was sealed. The Royal Commission obtained Eleanor's symptom register, Dr. Lowe's original certificate, Julian's altered declaration, the exposed staff rota, wage records, letters withheld from patients, orders denying access to the county physician, the instruction locking the eastern wing, Eleanor's dismissal notice, correspondence concerning the royal appointment. Julian attempted to describe the altered certificate as an administrative clarification. Dr. Harcourt rejected the phrase. "You did not clarify the physician's conclusion," he said. "You expanded it beyond what he examined. The selected servants showed no serious illness. You selected the servants. They were representative of the people recovering." Julian looked across the hearing table. "I believed the illness had been contained. Then why refuse an independent examination?" "Because public reporting would have cancelled the assembly before the facts were established." Dr. Harcourt's expression hardened. "The facts were exactly what you prevented from being established." Dr. Henry Lowe testified next. He appeared uncomfortable but did not attempt to protect Julian. "Did His Grace ask you to certify the entire estate?" the commissioner asked. "He asked me to examine the available cases." "Were all cases made available?" "No." "Did you request access to the eastern wing?" "Yes." "What were you told?" "That the patients were resting and further examination would cause unnecessary disturbance." "Did you sign the statement sent to the royal household?" Lowe looked at the altered page. "Not in this form." "Did you authorize removal of the qualification?" "No." The commissioner turned towards Julian. "Why was the physician's limitation removed?" Julian answered, "Because the hall used by the royal guests had been examined. The declaration concerned the entire residence. The guests would not enter the servants' wing. The servants would enter the guest rooms." Julian had no answer. His entire defense depended upon treating the people below stairs as though their bodies remained below stairs, even while their labor moved throughout the house. Eleanor testified without the Ravensmere badge Julian had taken from her. She described the first fever, the contact groups, and the repeated requests for independent medical review. The commissioner asked, "Did you know with certainty what illness affected the staff?" "No." "Then why demand cancellation?" "Because uncertainty is not evidence of safety." "Did you intend to create public alarm?" I intended to prevent public exposure. Did His Grace provide any medical reason for refusing the county physician? No. What reason did he provide? The royal visit. Julian's counsel asked whether Eleanor's personal experience with military disease had made her overly cautious. She answered calmly, "My experience taught me that powerful institutions often call caution excessive until the consequences become visible." The counsel continued. Most patients recovered. Yes. Then was the danger perhaps overstated? Eleanor looked towards the commission. A favorable outcome does not make concealment responsible. The wage records produced another scandal. Every servant locked inside the eastern wing had been marked absent without service. Julian claimed the classification had been applied automatically. The head steward disagreed. His Grace approved the revised payroll. Why suspend the wages? The commissioner asked. We were told continued payment would encourage servants to report ordinary fatigue as illness before major events. Julian turned sharply towards the steward. The statement had been spoken during a private meeting. Now it entered the official record. Martha's wages had supported her mother. 2 laundry workers had children in rented rooms outside the estate. A stable boy's family depended upon his weekly pay. Their illness had not merely removed them from work. Julian had turned reporting symptoms into a financial threat. The commission concluded that this policy had likely caused Martha and others to conceal their illness for longer. Julian had described the outbreak as the irresponsibility of a few sick servants. His own system had taught them that honesty might cost their families food. Catherine appeared before the commission on the final day. She brought the withheld letters. Some had been written by patients and never sent. Others came from families and were never delivered. One envelope bore Martha's mother's handwriting. She had asked only whether her daughter was alive. The estate office returned it with the notation, "No visitors during household preparations." The commissioner asked Catherine, "Why did His Grace request that you receive the Queen beside him?" "Because the public associated my name with the community clinic." "What would your presence have suggested?" "That the medical situation was under control." "Was it?" "No." Julian looked towards her. Catherine did not avoid his gaze. He had believed marriage entitled him to her loyalty. He had not understood that he was asking her to transform medical doubt into social reassurance without allowing her access to the truth. The commission's report acknowledged Julian's previous reforms. He had improved servant housing. He had built a clinic. He had ended physical punishments and established pensions. But these achievements did not erase the authority he had abused. The report found that Julian had knowingly concealed a suspected contagious outbreak, altered a physician's qualified statement, prevented independent medical inspection, dismissed Eleanor for refusing to support a false declaration, locked patients behind an externally controlled door, withheld correspondence, suspended sick pay, assigned exposed servants to royal duties, used Catherine's charitable reputation as implied medical approval, prioritized appointment and ceremony over staff welfare. His nomination as Lord Chamberlain was permanently cancelled. He resigned from the Royal Ceremonial Committee. Ravensmere's clinic was transferred to an independent medical board. Julian lost all authority to edit, retain, or approve staff medical records. Future events required certification from an outside physician. No servant could be dismissed or denied wages for reporting symptoms. The financial consequences reached far beyond the estate. Hotels had prepared rooms. Merchants had imported food. Musicians had rejected other engagements. Farmers had delivered meat, cream, and fruit. Julian had warned that cancelling the assembly would destroy local earnings. The commission agreed that suppliers should not bear the loss. Julian sold 2 racing horses, a London townhouse, and several pieces from his silver collection. The money compensated the affected businesses and paid every servant's lost wages. Catherine insisted that the fund be administered independently. "You do not control who receives relief," she said. "I am paying for the damage. You are paying because you caused it. That does not purchase gratitude." Julian accepted the condition. A year earlier, he would have demanded that every payment carry the Ravensmere name. Now the checks carried only the name of the compensation board. Eleanor was offered the position of honorary matron of Ravensmere Hall. She declined. Julian met her in the newly reorganized clinic, with 2 board members present. "I intended the title to restore what I took. You cannot restore professional independence by placing it beneath your household. What do you require? A medical authority you cannot dismiss when its conclusions inconvenience you." Her proposed charter guaranteed paid sick leave, confidential patient records, independent examinations, family notification, staff representation, protection for reporting symptoms, medical control of quarantine spaces, transparent event cancellation procedures, no alteration of clinical statements by employers. The board adopted every provision. Eleanor became director of estate health. She did not report to Julian. She could suspend any gathering without seeking his permission. That was the first policy at Ravensmere, designed to function even when the Duke disagreed with it. Julian gave his apology in the ballroom. The room that had been prepared for dancing now held servants, families, physicians, and local suppliers. No royal banners remained. "I called Mrs. Price hysterical because calmness was useful to me only when it protected my plans," Julian said. He turned towards Eleanor. "You counted the sick. I counted the consequences to my career." Then he faced Martha Lane. "I knew servants were ill. I altered the medical declaration and invited the Crown into the same house." Martha's mother sat beside her. Julian continued. "I locked the sick behind a door and called it quarantine, because quarantine sounded responsible." He looked towards the payroll records placed upon the table. "I treated absence caused by my order as misconduct." No one applauded. Martha did not forgive him publicly. Eleanor did not praise his honesty. Catherine did not stand beside him. For once, Julian understood that apology did not require a favorable response to remain necessary. Catherine moved into the cottage beside the community clinic. Julian visited after the medical charter was approved. "I have surrendered control of the estate records," he said. "You should never have controlled them. I know. You understand that now because the commission removed the power." He lowered his eyes. "Yes." Catherine folded a patient report. "You wanted my clinic beside your declaration so everyone would mistake my compassion for medical approval. I believed your absence would create fear. Your false certificate created danger." He sat opposite her. "Will you return to Ravensmere Hall?" "Not because the outbreak ended. What must happen? You must choose disclosure when the truth may embarrass you and may later prove harmless." 3 years later, Ravensmere Hall prepared a small diplomatic dinner. 2 days before the event, a young kitchen maid reported fever and nausea. The steward called it exhaustion. The ambassadors were already traveling. Food had been ordered. Julian sat at the end of the operations meeting with 1 vote. Eleanor presented her recommendation. Stop preparations. Examine every close contact. Inform the guests. Continue all wages. The steward objected. "It may be nothing," Eleanor replied. "That is what examination will determine." The room turned towards Julian. 3 years earlier, he would have asked whether the girl could still stand. This time, he closed the program. "Suspend the dinner. The embarrassment will be considerable," the steward said. "Then the household will endure embarrassment. The cost. I will pay the cost of deciding early rather than ask the staff to pay the cost of my pride." The event was postponed. The maid's illness proved non-contagious. No outbreak followed. Julian did not regret the decision. It had been easy to tell the truth when 27 patients and the Queen stood behind an opened door. This decision mattered, because no one yet knew whether the warning would prove important. Catherine had watched the meeting from the gallery. Afterwards, they walked through the former eastern wing. The external lock had been removed. Wide windows brought sunlight into the rooms. Medical staff controlled access according to patient needs, not household reputation. "I once believed a well-run estate was one in which illness remained invisible," Julian said. "A well-run estate is one in which the ill do not need to disappear. I wanted to protect everyone above stairs by treating everyone below stairs as replaceable." He looked towards Eleanor, teaching 2 young nurses how to document symptoms. "I gave them food and believed that proved I had cared for them." Care begins when the patient's welfare matters more than the caretaker's reputation. Catherine stopped near the open doorway. "I will return to Ravensmere Hall." Julian waited. "The clinic remains independent." "Yes, Eleanor controls every medical decision." "Yes, my name is never used as approval for a report I have not examined." "Yes, and you never hold the key to a treatment ward." Julian looked at the empty space where the old lock had been. "I will not." They walked back towards the hall together. Julian never received the royal appointment. The clinic did not carry his name. Eleanor retained authority he could not revoke. Servants reported illness without losing wages. The Duke had once believed locking a door could keep sickness, disorder, and shame away from his ballroom. The lock had contained only people. It had never contained the truth. And Ravensmere became safer only when the welfare of those behind the door mattered more than the ceremony waiting on the other side.